Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Daley. Here. Senator Canizaro. Senator Krasner. Here. Senator Steinbeck. Chair Orenshaw.
Present. Please mark members present as they arrive, and if they're not able to join us today, then they will be marked absent, excused. We do have a quorum. Want to go over a few housekeeping reminders. I'd ask everyone to silence their electronic devices. If someone wishes to testify, please sign in at the table by the door. Please provide a business card, if you have one, to our committee secretary. For those joining us online on the internet, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize any background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name and affiliation, if any, with any groups for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you're done speaking. If you're going to be giving paper copies of a handout, we'd ask for 20 paper copies for members of the public. Electronic copies of the handout should have been submitted in PDF form to our committee manager 24 hours in advance of the committee meeting. If anyone wants to provide testimony today and runs out of time or is not able to testify, you can email, mail, fax our committee and submit your written testimony. We will make it part of the record. Some of the issues here in legislative operations and elections are not ones that we'll all agree on, but we do expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if you don't agree with someone else's position. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. As a reminder, we may take agenda items out of order. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. And with that, I would like to go to our first hearing. I see we have Assemblymember Dahlia, and I'd like to open the hearing on AJR 13. Thank you for joining us. And welcome Assemblymember Gallant, too. Good to see you both.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Orenshaw, and Vice Chair Daley, and members of this esteemed committee. Assemblymember Joe Dahlia, for the record, Joedalia, representing Assembly District 29 in Henderson. I'm here today to proudly present Assembly Joint Resolution 13, urging the federal government to maintain its moratorium on the explosive testing of nuclear weapons outside of Clark County. With me to co-present today are Assemblymember Danielle Gallant, and remotely, Mark Melamed, Deputy Vice President of the Global Nuclear Policy Program at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. The intent of this bill is simple, keeping our families and our kids safe from the dangers of active explosive nuclear testing. And as you'll hear from Mr. Melamed, there is a well-documented body of evidence about the health hazards and environmental damage that result from the testing of these warheads. This is a bipartisan and common sense measure, and I urge your support. With that, I will turn this over to my wonderful colleague across the aisle, Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Dahlia. Assemblymember Gallant, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm Danielle Gallant, and I represent District 23, which is one of the third largest districts in Clark County. It goes all the way down to Laughlin. So I probably have more scorpions in my district than I do people. So I'd like to add and support my colleague, Assemblymember Dahlia. I agree with all of his comments, and as a resident of Las Vegas, and particularly Boulder City, who's home to the largest herd of bighorn sheep, I'm very concerned about the impacts to our community if we start blowing below ground nuclear testing. More than 900 nuclear detonations conducted before 1992 have left a lasting impact on Nevada residents, land, and water, with consequences that continue to shape the region today. Since then, the United States has utilized cutting-edge scientific and technological advancements to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of these weapons. We do not need to go back to the old ways of doing things. Protecting Nevada residents is a nonpartisan issue, and I thank Assemblymember Dahlia for asking me to join him today in support of AJR 13.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Gallant, Assemblymember Dahlia. Thank you very much for the resolution. I'm not sure we've had a resolution on nuclear testing before, so it's really groundbreaking, and it's wonderful that you're bringing it. Do you want me to go to your co-presenter on Zoom at this point?
Yes, please, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mark Melamed, and I work for the Nuclear Threat Initiative, a nonpartisan global security organization in Washington, D.C., focused on reducing nuclear and other threats facing humanity. Prior to joining NTI, I worked for the U.S. government for 11 years in various national security positions, serving under Republican and Democratic presidents. This included jobs at the Department of Energy, the Department of State, the White House National Security Council. Most of my time in government was dedicated to advancing policies to strengthen U.S. national security by reducing nuclear dangers. In that spirit, I'm pleased to join this hearing to testify in support of Assembly Joint Resolution 13, urging the federal government to maintain the moratorium on the explosive testing of nuclear weapons. Between 1945 and 1992, the United States conducted over 1,000 explosive nuclear tests. 928 of these were conducted in Nevada. The state of Nevada and its people have firsthand experience of nuclear testing on a scale that is incomprehensible to those who do not live there. While there was a time when this was a necessary service to U.S. national security, there is no need now, 33 years after the last U.S. nuclear explosive test, to repeat that service. Nuclear tests that decades ago sent tremors through Las Vegas and contaminated Nevada's environment are not needed to ensure a safe, reliable, and effective U.S. nuclear deterrent. Since the 1990s, the U.S. Stockpile Stewardship Program has used computer modeling and advanced scientific capabilities to maintain America's nuclear deterrent without nuclear explosive testing. The Nevada National Security Site today plays a key role in this initiative, hosting subcritical, that is non-nuclear explosive tests that support U.S. national security. Those activities can and will continue with this resolution. For 30 years, Congress and presidents of both parties have continued to support the Stockpile Stewardship Program, and because of its success, the continuation of the moratorium on nuclear explosive testing. Indeed, Brandon Williams, President Trump's nominee to lead the National Nuclear Security Administration tasked with maintaining U.S. nuclear weapons, testified before Congress just last month that he would would not advise testing and that we should rely on the scientific information. If the United States were to resume explosive nuclear testing, potential adversaries who have not tested since the 1990s would likely begin testing again as well. They have much more to gain from doing this than we do, having conducted fewer tests in the past. The resolution in front of you today highlights many of the risks and costs that would accompany a resumption of nuclear testing. It also notes how unpopular the idea is. In a poll conducted last year, more than 72% of Nevadans opposed resuming explosive nuclear testing. This resolution is an opportunity to make clear Nevada's support for the moratorium on nuclear testing and to ensure that Nevadans are not asked once again to shoulder the burden of nuclear tests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of AJR 13, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I think there's a couple of us on this committee who are of the vintage and growing up in Las Vegas that we were alive. We were teenagers when they still did below ground nuclear testing in southern Nevada. And I think I'd be remiss not to mention Father Louis Vitale used to go and protest with Nevada Desert Experience. Almost every time there'd be a nuclear test at the test site. And, he's passed on now, but I know that was a big passion of his, was trying to stop nuclear testing, and eventually it did stop, and a big victory that we've had for so many years now. Members, any questions for our assembly members or our expert on Zoom? Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Would this apply to the entire United States, or you're just asking to keep the moratorium on no nuclear testing in Nevada?
Thank you, Senator Assemblymember Joe Dahlia, for the record. The core of this, the intent is to focus on that nuclear test site outside of Clark County. The moratorium for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Senator Krasner? No. Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, and if I missed this at the beginning, I would apologize. But I was just, as I read the resolution, it says former national security officials and other Washington-based research organizations have recently called for renewed explosive nuclear testing. And so in light of what you've brought up about that's not necessary anymore and that no other countries have done that, why are they calling for it? What is their rationale as you understand it?
Thank you, Senator Assemblymember Joe Dahlia, for the record. I might need to kick that one to my co-presenter, Mr. Melamed. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I hesitate to speak for them, but my understanding is I have not seen anybody make a technical argument for a need to resume testing. I think there are people who believe it would be a show of force or somehow a show of strength to do so, which in my estimation is a mistaken approach. But I believe that is sort of the core of the argument that they're making.
So it's more, in your view then, the desire to renew it is more in the presentation than the technical need.
That's my understanding. I have not seen anyone make an argument that there's a technical need, so.
Thank you very much. And I think that spurred one question I have for the gentleman on Zoom. Are there any countries that are doing below ground nuclear testing, like North Korea or any other countries that we know of that are?
So North Korea is the only country that has done a test in this century, and they've conducted 6 underground nuclear tests. I think the most recent one in 2017, but no other country has conducted a nuclear test this century.
And are they a signatory to the test ban treaty, or did they never sign that?
I don't believe they've signed up. I would have to look that up. But
Thank you. Thanks so much. Senator Krasner, I believe, had another question.
Thank you again, Chair. Another question has been prompted. Is this, we're referring there, line 12, first page, whereas former national security officials and other Washington-based research organizations have recently called for renewed explosive nuclear testing, which if adopted would occur underground. So is this something that the Trump administration is doing? Is this something in response to the Trump administration?
Thank you, Senator. Why don't you take that?
To our co-presenter on Zoom, please state your name for the record and proceed, sir.
Sure, yes, Mark Malamed on Zoom, sorry. No, I mean, this is not something the Trump administration is pursuing. The nominee for to lead President Trump's National Nuclear Security Administration said he would advise against testing. So this is sort of other experts in the area, but this is not something that the Trump administration has expressed support for.
Thank you very much for the answer. And again, I really like the resolution because I feel like if, let's say, there are countries like North Korea that keep up with underground nuclear testing, there may be pressure felt by other countries to resume. So I think the resolution is so timely. Thank you for bringing it. Members, any additional questions for our co-presenters? I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you so much for being here, Assembly Members Dahlia and Gallant and Mr. I don't want to mess up your name, so I won't try, but our co-presenter on Zoom. I'd like to now open it up for support of Assembly Joint Resolution 13. Anyone in Carson City or in Las Vegas who'd like to speak in support of the measure? We are limiting testimony to 2 minutes per person. I'll start here in Carson City, and then we'll go down, see if anybody shows up in Vegas. Whoever would like to begin, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Trevor Parrish with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of AJR 13, as we have a decades-long history of opposition to nuclear testing in Nevada. If the long-standing federal moratorium on nuclear testing were to be lifted, it would have a tremendous amount of negative implications to our state, including severe economic and environmental harm. Through all the potential impacts listed within AJR 13, the Nevada community has made it clear that nuclear testing has no place here in our state. The Chamber would like to thank the bill sponsor for bringing this forward, and we thank you for your support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Whoever would like to go next, state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tristan St. Dennis, and I am the Policy Associate with the Nevada Conservation League. We believe that nuclear testing has significant risks to Nevada's air, land, water, and public health. Radioactive material from previous nuclear tests are still present in the groundwater of some areas of the Nevada National Security Site, and further testing could contaminate our groundwater, soil, and air even more. As the driest state in the nation, Nevada's water resources are precious and need to be protected, not put at greater risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. I'm here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. A lot of people ask, why do we need resolutions like this? There's no way that they would ever think of doing this type of testing in Nevada again. Well, we just don't know. if they will or they won't. I know that my Southern Nevada colleagues have been concerned about the fallout if they were to do these types of tests. Well, as a native Nevadan, I spent my elementary school years in Tonopah, Nevada, not far from where they were doing a lot of these testings. Some people say that explains a lot about my personality. But I can tell you that
Gave you superpowers, Mr. Clark.
I never got COVID, that's for sure. But I can tell you that it's bigger than just Southern Nevada. If, we have an image in this state, and we poke fun at a lot of our history. Bob Miller did the extraterrestrial highway, that leads down by Ruth, Nevada, because, of Area 51 and spooks from the sky and stuff like that. But this is something, it's a serious matter, because if there were to begin testing again, the image of Nevada would be just that. And we rely so heavily on tourism to bring folks here. We don't need another reason for people not to visit here. From the economic development perspective, this is Nye County, Nevada. One of my clients, NextEra, is developing hundreds and hundreds of megawatts of new solar renewable energy throughout these rural parts of our state. People do live there. Economies are doing well out there. This type of testing, if it were to restart, could bring a halt to all of that economic development that we have seen in our rural parts of our state, from Elko to Ely to Pahrump and other places. Tonopah, of course, being close to my heart. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, we stand in full support of AJR 13. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark, and thank you for the kind remembrances of Assemblyman Bob Price and his work on the extraterrestrial alien highway. That was, he got Nevada national news. I remember him being interviewed on the BBC when that bill passed. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Alex Ortiz here representing Clark County. We also are here in support of this AGR, and I can't say it any better than my colleague Tom Clark, so I'll just say ditto. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate Clark County's input, as all the other government agencies and chambers. Anyone in Vegas? I don't see anyone coming forward. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines in support of Assembly Joint Resolution 13?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Joint Resolution 13, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hi, this is Peter Guzman. Thank you for allowing me to give this testimony today. On behalf of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, I am writing to express our strong support for Assembly Joint Resolution 13. The resumption of nuclear testing would have significant unintended negative consequences on our economy based on residents and tourists. I also want to say that with over 40 million visitors, going backwards to the 50s and 60s and mushroom clouds and radiation fears is not something we need now. We need to push our state forward and promote innovation, sustainability, and diplomacy rather than this outdated, dangerous practices. So for those reasons and many of that came from my colleagues, the Latin Chamber of Commerce is proud to support AJR 13, and we urge its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman. Anyone else on the phone lines in support of AJR 13?
Here we have one additional caller. Caller, please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the last 3 digits, 815. Please press *6 to unmute your phone. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
My name is Dave Crete, and I'm the chairman of the board for the Invisible Enemy. I represent the group of military that served on the Nevada Test and Training Range, which is where all this took place. I lived in a dorm that was walking distance from test sites. I have children that all have birth defects, and I have multiple health issues, as does nearly everyone that I served with. I've listened to Peter and others talk about the economic impact that this would have, and I believe they're 100% correct. But there's a human impact that impacted all of our lives that had to live around this and drink the water and breathe the air and walk in the dust. Those of us in the military that served out there have the average age of death of 65. There is nothing that we can learn after 928 tests that have already been conducted in Nevada. We know what we know. There's the technology that will stimulate what they need to learn if there's anything. I've heard the motivations as to why this has come up as a subject again, but the human cost of what has happened in Nevada is paid by those of us that lived out there for 4+ years. So I urge the committee to be in support of AJR 13 and communicate to the federal government that there should never be nuclear testing again, and there should never be nuclear testing again in the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, sir. Thank you for sharing everything you've been through, and hopefully someday the federal government will try to do something to remedy everything that you and the other military members on the base there at the test site went through. Thank you. Broadcasting, any other callers waiting to call in support?
Chair, we have no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to opposition. Opposition to Assembly Joint Resolution 13 here in Carson City or down in Vegas. I'm not seeing anyone come forward. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the phone lines in opposition to the measure?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition to Assembly Joint Resolution 13, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to neutral. Anyone who's neutral and wishes to be heard in Carson City or down in Vegas? Not seeing anyone come forward. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines who's neutral and wishes to be heard?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral to Assembly Joint Resolution 13, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. Assembly members Dahlia, Gallant, any closing comments you'd like to make? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for presenting the bill today. We really appreciate it. And we'll now close the hearing on Assembly Joint Resolution 13. And we are very fortunate to have Speaker Yeager, our Speaker of the Nevada Assembly here. And we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 497. Thank you for joining us, Speaker.
Thank you so much, Chair Orenshaw, Vice Chair Daley, and members of the Senate Legislative Operations and Elections Committee. For the record, I am Steve Yeager. I represent Assembly District 9, which is down in southwest Las Vegas, and I am pleased to present Assembly Bill 497 in its first reprint to you this afternoon. This bill revises provisions relating to campaign finance. You'll see with me at the table, I have Mr. Voloshin from the Secretary of State's office. And then down south, we have a couple co-presenters that you might recognize as well, Mr. Schrager, and we also have Mr. DiChiara from the Secretary of State's office as well. So they're going to help me present the bill and answer questions with your permission, Chair. Just some background information. This bill, I believe, makes common sense changes to campaign finance law to help inspire confidence that political contributions are being spent for appropriate activities. It also ensures that those who run for office and lose, and those who are former public officials, know exactly how long they can hold on to their campaign funds while continuing to be transparent with the public about how they are using those funds before they dispose of them. Chair, with your permission, I will go through the bill. It's not all that involved, thankfully, but I'll go through and just highlight the sections for you.
Please go ahead, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Section 1 authorizes a political action committee, also known as a PAC, to use contributions deposited in its account for certain purposes, including contributing to a candidate, a legal defense fund, a nonprofit corporation, giving contributions to another PAC, a committee for the recall of a public officer, political party, or a committee sponsored by a political party. It might shock you and members of the committee to know that right now the law is very unclear about how a PAC can spend money, and that has led to some confusion about whether PACs can spend money on personal expenses. This bill, by listing what PACs can spend money on, makes very clear that you cannot spend PAC money on personal expenses. I will note, as the committee knows, that PAC contributions to candidates under this bill are still subject to the contribution limits of either $5,000 in a primary or $10,000 in a general, as already set forth in statute. So this bill does not purport to change that. Political action committees under this bill may also use contributions to make any expenditure, including an independent expenditure. Section 2 revises the definition of a committee for political action to exclude any nonprofit organization or corporation organized under federal law, state law, or the laws of any other state, the District of Columbia, or territory of the United States. Section 3 authorizes a defeated candidate and every formerly elected official to use unspent contributions in their next election if the election takes place within the next 4 years. Current law allows elected candidates to use unspent contributions in their next election, but defeated candidates must dispose of any unspent contributions. Assembly Bill 497 would provide the same opportunity for candidates who run and lose to use unspent contributions in their next election if it is within 4 years. If a defeated candidate or former elected official does not file a declaration of candidacy or appear on any official ballot at the election within the next 4 years, they must dispose of all unspent contributions within 15 days in a manner consistent with existing law. Section 3 additionally clarifies that defeated candidates and former public officials with any unspent contributions are still subject to campaign finance reporting requirements as long as they have unspent contributions. So they're going to need to file those reports that we're also used to on a quarterly basis. Section 4 of the bill is what we amended that in the Assembly side. It covers folks who had unspent contributions prior to the effective date of this bill, which will be October 1, 2025. They will now have 4 years from the effective date of this bill to dispose of unspent contributions. And the thought there was there are going to be people who are sort of stuck in a little bit of a gray area because they have contributions, campaign contributions, but the bill is not yet effective. So we wanted to essentially grandfather them in to give them the 4-year waiting period. Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation on Assembly Bill 497. I want to thank you for your time and consideration of this important legislation. And if you would allow, Chair, I would like to hand it over to the Secretary of State and then Mr. Schrager to make some additional comments and perhaps add a little bit more color to why we're making these changes.
Absolutely. Whoever would like to go next, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Gabriel DeCara, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. Thank you very much, Chair Orenshaw and members of the committee. We're grateful to Speaker Yeager for bringing this bill. We have our own campaign finance bill, which we see as complementary to this one that you'll be hearing next week. We are very excited about additional transparency and clarification in the law. We all want clean and clear rules when it comes to campaign finance. And we believe that AB 497 moves statute in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chief Deputy Secretary of State DeGuerra. Whoever would like to go next, please state
Yes,
the record.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Bradley Schrager of Bravo Schrager here in Las Vegas. I'd like to thank the Speaker as well for bringing this bill. As a political law and election law attorney, I spend a lot of time guiding and assisting and interpreting campaign finance law for candidates and PACs and other political actors. The changes in AB 497 target 3 areas that are of continuing and ongoing confusion, that are in need of clarification and are good public policy in and of themselves. The first being the clarification regarding what PAC money can be spent on. Each of the members of the committee have been and will be again, I assume, candidates for office and have to deal with campaign finance and campaign accounts and know that there is a but-for test for their personal use. You're all familiar with that. That doesn't seem to work very well in the PAC context because there's the but-for being a candidate or a public officer. You wouldn't be making this expenditure. That works for you, but there's no such thing as sort of but-for being a PAC. You would or wouldn't do X, Y, or Z. So instead of framing it in a but-for test, AB 497 frames it as here's the list of acceptable things you can spend PAC money on. And of course, PACs are not businesses. They don't have employees. They can't pay payroll taxes or workers' comp taxes. PACs are essentially bank accounts, right? They take money in, they send money out. So the question is, what can they send money out for? And so the list of 7 exclusive areas in which PACs can spend money under Section 1, and I want to call special attention to Section 7, which is make any expenditure, including without limitation, an independent expenditure. I want to be clear that that doesn't mean any expenditure as in you can go buy a boat, or someone who has a PAC can go, take a trip to Aruba. Expenditure in this section has the definition it carries under Chapter 294A, which has to do with electoral advocacy or an independent expenditure. So PACs would be entitled to make expenditures having to do with electoral advocacy, paying vendors, making contributions, those kinds of things. But we are circumscribing finally in Nevada the things that PACs can spend money on, which has been unregulated up to now. Secondly, revising the definition of PAC to exclude nonprofit organizations. This has been a site of tremendous confusion for many, many years. In fact, one of, if not the most common question I get as a political attorney from nonprofits is, does what I'm doing, either making contributions or contributing to an independent expenditure campaign, acting in the political arena, does that transform me into a PAC? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. But we thought it was important finally to demonstrate that a PAC is a PAC and a nonprofit is a nonprofit. They are separate entities. And though there may be, nonprofits will still, under this law, be able to have PACs. Anyone can have a PAC. But a nonprofit itself will not be defined or regulated as a PAC. They will be defined and regulated separately. So that'll clear up that confusion. And then finally, in Section 3, there is no more confusing section of campaign finance law than the unspent contribution provisions currently there. It is I think there's a dozen subsections in there. They cross-cut. They've got all sorts of, if you lose in this way but not in that way, if you intend to do this, you can keep your contributions. We all know of situations in which, someone we thought was going to have to get rid of their money doesn't, or someone got rid of their money and didn't have to. As a lawyer, I could have always argued one way or the other, and so you wound up with a hash in which enforcement seemed unlikely, if not impossible. So it was thought that finally it is good to move to a bright line test, that if you are out of office, if you lose or if you leave office, if you don't run, you have 4 years, and I think it's 15 days after the 4 years to get rid of your unspent contributions if you don't file for office or appear on a ballot. So that will hopefully clear up what has been a long-standing confusion about what to do with money once you are no longer a candidate or a public officer. So that's my presentation for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schrager. Any questions, members, for our presenters? Vice Chair Daley and then Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe this question will be for Mr. Schrager, I'm not sure. And I was looking at Section 1, and I think you answered my last question that I had there. So they could pay a vendor if they're doing independent expenditures. I suppose if they had a legitimate accounting expense or something like that, they would be able to find a way in those lines there to pay administrative costs. So not necessarily a question there. In subsection 2, and I'm reading it and I'm looking at it and I'm trying to get to the nonprofit organization. Who are we trying to talk about there on that nonprofit organization? And you said you've been asked, depends on what you're doing. So it seems to me that when we have the definition of a PAC, it includes any business, social organization, corporation, partnership, association, trust, unincorporated organization, or labor union. And then when you get down to what a PAC is not, you have the, except as otherwise provided in paragraph B of subsection 1, a labor union is not a PAC. So unless they engage in that activity under B1, I think you have the same thing, the except for a corporation. So I'm questioning, why don't we have the same except for the activity under subsection B1 for a nonprofit organization? It seems to me that would make it clear. It would put all of those people on the same footing. And if they did engage in those activities, clearly they're acting as a PAC, and they would have all of the other limitations that a PAC would have.
Yes, Senator Bradley Schrager, once again, for the record. You know, I don't think I disagree with you in total. I do think that that the primary site of confusion here was that nonprofits, more so than businesses, were, at least, there was a question as to whether they were engaging in B1 and B2 activity, probably B2, and that they were then at a much higher rate, thinking or perhaps running the risk of being regulated as a PAC when they were a nonprofit. So we thought that it was best to sort of separate the regulatory regimes. I also think it's exceptionally rare when a business does the things we're talking about under B1 or B2, because businesses don't have as their primary purpose affecting the outcome, and B2 is if you're running an independent expenditure. So in my mind, a labor union or a business probably, almost never in my experience, run the risk of being regulated as a PAC. And of course, those businesses or labor unions can have PACs, and they would be wise to run those independent expenditure or political activity through their PAC. But oftentimes, nonprofits, as we talked about last night in the hearing, on a whole other Senate bill having to do with nonprofits disclosing their donors. Nonprofits have obviously real reasons not to want to be regulated as a PAC, or sometimes not even to have PACs, because it may lead to the disclosure of donors, which may be in conflict with other parts of their organization.
And follow up. So not to argue with you, but we'll argue a little bit. So B2 says, if it's one of those organizations listed up there, as I said, corporation, labor union, trust, et cetera, which does not have as its primary purpose affecting the outcome of any primary election, general election, special election, or any question on the ballot, but for the purpose of affecting the outcome of an election or question on the ballot, receives contributions in excess of $5,000 in a calendar year, or makes expenditures in excess of $5,000 in a year. That activity, even though it's not their primary purpose, if they're engaging in that election activity, then they would meet the definition of a PAC. Now, I know that, for instance, the union, right, where I have some experience there, the union itself doesn't engage in that activity. We have a political action committee and set up in accordance with the rules and do the filings and all that stuff, at least while I was there. No, they still do. They still do. Seems to me that we have nonprofits in the same arena. And I'm thinking of, I mean, I've seen plenty of, Americans for Prosperity engaging in what I believe is express advocacy. It's not, they've crossed the line and they're actually naming or coming very close to naming candidates rather than just sticking with the issue. And that's where the line is blurred to me. And I think it would be more clear if we had that except as otherwise provided in subsection C, that, if you're going to engage in those activities directly as that organization, right, that you're a PAC. And I think it would clear it up for some of the PACs and nonprofit organizations that are engaging in that activity without separating as a PAC, where they just claim, we're not doing express advocacy, I'm not doing anything. Anyway, I just believe that it'd be clearer if we had that, if they engage that activity, even though it's not their primary activity, then they're a PAC. Set up a separate PAC if you want to do that activity and be regulated. But if you're going to engage in that as the actual body, then you should be covered.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator Bradley Schrager, once again. And I don't think we're saying different things. I think we're saying them differently. I certainly think that there should be regulation upon that kind of political activity, but I don't think that it is necessarily useful to transform or treat a nonprofit as a PAC, right? Nonprofits have employees, they have a corporate structure, they're corporations. Labor unions have other purposes. They may involve themselves in political activity through a PAC or through other means. They don't exist to do that. Oftentimes, certain nonprofits exist for, if not electoral activity, then at least political activity. So while I would agree with you that they should be regulated, or that those entities should set up PACs to do those things, and that they should be regulated, and they should be regulated when they do those things, they should not be treated as PACs, because that leads to confusions regarding the corporate form. So the whole point of this, in my mind, wasn't to let any particular entity escape regulation or scrutiny. It was to separate them definitionally, that a nonprofit corporation which is organized under NRS chapters 81 and 82 is not the same thing and cannot be the same thing as a political action committee set up under chapter 294A.
Any follow-up, Senator Daly?
I guess I don't know if we're saying the exact same thing. So if a PAC engages in the activity under the existing law, they would not be a PAC and they couldn't do it. If the union did the same thing, they would have to be a PAC. I'm just saying, how come it's not good for the nonprofit, unnamed nonprofit organization or nonprofit corporation that engages in that activity to be 100% exempt, and other organizations that engage in that same activity are not exempt? I mean, they're not exempt. They have to comply if they engage in the activity, but under this rendition, a nonprofit organization or nonprofit corporation that engaged in that activity would still be exempt. And I just think that's inherently unfair.
Yes, once again, Bradley Schrager, thank you very much for that question, and I understand what you're saying. You know, we have inherited a statute, and then what we're trying to do is solve particular problems that have arisen under the statute. I think that the reverse would be a better result than pulling PACs or nonprofits back into the definition of PAC. I think that it would be better to exclude labor unions from the danger of being defined as a PAC as well. It wouldn't be any good for either a local or an international labor union, which is of massive size and has revenues and budgets of millions of dollars, to be defined as a PAC under state law, any more than I think it's good for a corporation under NRS 81 to be defined as a PAC. We're talking about definitions of what the corporate forms are, not necessarily how and when we would regulate them.
And I understand everybody can go set up their PAC, but if they engage in that activity as the actual organization rather than through a PAC, I don't think they should be excluded. The union either. I don't think the nonprofit should be either. And there are some nonprofits you may be saying, hey, I'm thinking Eminence List does good stuff and we don't want to put any rules on them, but American for Prosperity does a lot of bad stuff, if you ask me, and they should be regulated. And I just not seeing the distinction and letting people off without any constraint, I think just opens it up worse than it is now. I've filed these complaints with the Secretary of State, and they said, well, you know, they're a nonprofit, and there's different rules, and, you know, we can't get prosecution, and maybe it was express habits here, it wasn't, you know. I'm just saying, I don't think this makes it better. I think it just opens it up a little more Wild West, in my opinion.
Senator Bradley Schrager, with, one more rejoinder to that, because I'm not arguing with you, and I see exactly what you're getting at, and I don't disagree with you. I think the better path then is to set up a regime that would regulate political actors, whether they're labor unions or nonprofit organizations, when they do this activity, as opposed to saying when you do this activity, you are a PAC. That's the distinction I'm making. I'm certainly not against regulating or transparency in the realm of campaign activity by those actors. I just think that they shouldn't be considered PACs, because PACs are very specific things under law, and the confusion came when, a nonprofit corporation all of a sudden is considered a PAC under law when they are two different things. That's all.
Thank you. I hope we can work on a way to have us both say the same thing in different ways and then come up with the words that do that. And then in the section on the campaign contributions and all that stuff has been a problem or a confusing issue. I think people understood it. I remember when the language got put in the Senate. I think Senator Atkins was still here, and it was only going to be 2 years, and then he stretched it out to 4, rightfully so. So I think this clears that up. I was going to work on something that this year on a bill that came across like this, but you got it handled, so I'm happy about that.
Thank you very much. And Senator Krasner? No. Been answered. Okay, all right, then, any other questions? Senator Steinbeck? None? No further questions. Thank you so much to our presenters. With that, I'd like to open it up to support for Assembly Bill 497. Anyone who'd like to speak in support of the bill in Carson City or in Las Vegas, now's your chance to come forward. And I'm not seeing anyone come forward in either of the hearing rooms. Broadcasting, is there anyone in support of Assembly Bill 497 on the phone lines who wishes to be heard?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 497, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to opposition. Anyone who's opposed to Assembly Bill 497 who wishes to be heard in Carson City or in Las Vegas? Good afternoon, sir. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Orenshaw and committee. My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party here in opposition to AB 497. We are in support of the provisions in Section 4 regarding unspent campaign contributions. However, the revision of the definition of a committee for political action in Section 2 to exclude nonprofit organizations or corporations legally established under federal law creates transparency concerns as it encourages a major expansion of, quote, dark money in our elections. The list of authorized contributions and expenditures in Section 1 of the bill is extensive, covering all aspects of political spending. Since nonprofit organizations would be excluded from the definition of a PAC, they wouldn't be subject to the same requirements to disclose donors, contributions, and expenditures, providing no transparency about the source of funds and how they are being used. Nonprofits under AB 497 would not face the same obligations, allowing them to influence elections without disclosing their donors. By loosening restrictions on nonprofit organizations and allowing them to operate outside the statutory disclosure requirements, the bill will create more opportunities for dark money to flow into political campaigns without public knowledge of where the funding originates. We could support AB 497 if Section 2 was amended, but as the bill stands, we are regretfully in opposition. Please vote no on AB 497. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Anyone else in opposition to the measure? I don't see anybody coming forward in Las Vegas. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines in opposition to the bill?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 497, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kimberly Fergus, F-E-R-G-U-S. I rise in strong opposition to AB 497. This bill threatens the integrity of Nevada's campaign finance system by allowing defeated candidates to retain unspent campaign funds for up to 4 years, effectively creating a personal war chest and inviting potential misuse under the guise of future campaigns. This provision encourages opportunistic candidates to exploit the system, flooding elections with self-serving candidates seeking financial gain rather than public service. Additionally, the exemption of nonprofits from PAC definitions creates a loophole for dark money to infiltrating campaigns, circumventing transparency, and enabling untraceable spending. This undermines the accountability mechanisms currently in place. Furthermore, data from the Nevada Secretary of State's office reveals that over $4 million in unspent campaign funds were reported in the last election cycle. Allowing these funds to sit indefinitely invites financial manipulation and undermines public trust in our electoral process. For these reasons, I urge the committee to reject AB 497 to prevent financial abuses, preserve transparency, and safeguard Nevada's political system from opportunistic exploitation. Thank you. Have a good day.
Cyrus Hojjati, Hojjaty. I will ditto. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Gifford, ELLEN, GI in Frank, ORD is in David. And echoing the opposition from what you've just heard, I strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Chair, we have no additional callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to now go to neutral. Anyone who's neutral on the bill who wishes to be heard, either in Carson City or in Las Vegas. Don't see anyone coming forward. Broadcasting anyone on the phone lines who's neutral to Assembly Bill 497.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 497, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, committee. My name is Cynthia Perrine, CYNTHIA I would like to say ditto to the previous speakers who spoke in opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you very much. Speaker, any closing comments you'd like to make? Thank you for presenting the bill today.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Committee Members, Steve Yeager, for the record. I think I understand where the point of contention is, and as Mr. Schrager said, it's not so much a matter of accountability and transparency. We want that, but it's a matter of sort of de facto changing the form of corporation without expressly doing so, I believe. So I heard those concerns, and I'll work with Mr. Schrager to see if we can come up with something that's acceptable to the committee, and appreciate your time this afternoon hearing the bill.
Thank you very much for presenting the bill. I'll now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 497. I'd like to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 499. Thank you so much again for being here, Speaker.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw, Vice Chair Daley, members of the Senate Legislative Operation and Elections Committee. For the record, I am still Steve Yeager. I still represent Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas, and I'm pleased to present Assembly Bill 499 in its first reprint to you today. There is also a conceptual amendment that has been uploaded to Nellis, and hopefully you've had a chance to see that. It just has 4 bullet points. It's on my letterhead, and I'll go through some of those changes as we talk a little bit about the bill. The bill, as proposed to be amended, does a few things. It requires the Secretary of State to establish an online voter services portal. It requires the Department of Motor Vehicles to transmit certain information to the Secretary of State, and it revises the signature curing process. Just like the last bill, with me at the table, I have Mr. Schrager, and I also have a representative from the Secretary of State's office to help provide comments and then help answer any questions. By way of background, Chair, this bill provides for additional voluntary information that can be provided for the signature verification process, meaning more votes will ultimately be counted rather than rejected. This bill also requires the Secretary of State to maintain an online portal so that information about voting is easily accessible to voters on the internet. Chair, with your permission, I can go through the sections of the bill relatively quickly, and then we can get to questions.
Whatever you'd like, Speaker. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Chair. Steve Yeager again for the record. So Section 2 of the bill, as written, requires each county clerk to establish and maintain a voter services portal on the clerk's website that allows registered voters to review their voter registration information, print the necessary form to update their voter registration information, view their sample ballot, and look up locations of polling places and ballot drop boxes in the county. The only change we made in the conceptual amendment is to say, rather than having each county clerk do that, we should have the Secretary of State maintain that voter services portal, so there's one point of access, no matter what district, or no matter what county you live in the state. Sections 4 through 8 require mail ballot return envelopes to include a QR code or other machine-readable code that would then direct voters to that online services portal. And if you think about this making sense, we want to have this QR code really on all communications. So if a voter is confused about what to do, they simply pull out their phone, scan the QR code, and it's going to bring up the Secretary of State's online voter services portal. Sections 4 and 8 additionally require mail ballot return envelopes to include a space for voters to voluntarily provide certain personally identifiable information for use in the new signature curing process proposed by Sections 5 and 9 of the bill. Those same sections, Sections 4 through 8, require the mail ballot return envelope to include a space for voters to voluntarily provide any of the following information. And again, this is voluntary. Voters do not have to provide this. The last 4 digits of their driver's license number, the last 4 digits of their social security number, or their voter identification number, which they can find on the Secretary of State's voter services portal. Again, providing this information is voluntary, and Sections 4 through 8 require this to be explained to voters in the instructions that are sent with their mail ballots. And I'll get to the reason for that in just a moment. Section 3 of the bill requires the Department of Motor Vehicles on a regular basis to submit certain information on each person who has a driver's license or identification card to the county clerks. Such information would include the person's name, date of birth, last 4 of the social security number, driver's license or ID card number, birthplace, sex, physical and mailing address, citizenship status, telephone number, email address, and veteran status. In the proposed amendment, this information, instead of being conveyed to the county clerks, will be conveyed to the Secretary of State, which I think better aligns it with the centralization top-down voter system that we are in the process, the Secretary of State is in the process of enacting. In the original bill, this duty would go to the county clerks, and the amendment, it goes to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State would then match that information from the DMV to the registered voters in the county and electronically enter the information into the statewide voter registration database. The Secretary of State would also indicate whether a registered voter has a driver's license or an ID card, and identify registered voters who do not have either, which may become an important thing to think about if the voters pass the second version of the voter ID amendment, that is the ballot initiative that is out there. Section 6 clarifies that the information provided to the county clerks, the Secretary of State by amendment, by the DMV is confidential and not a public record. Section 7 requires such information to be included in the statewide voter registration list as well. And then really, I think what is one of the hearts of the bill, Sections 5 and 9 make various changes to the signature curing process. If a voter voluntarily includes the last 4 digits of their driver's license, the last 4 digits of their social security number, or the voter identification number on the mail ballot returned, and that information is verified to be accurate by the county clerk, signature verification would not be required, and the voter would be entitled to cast the ballot based on that identifying information alone. Second, in those sections, the county and city clerks must ensure employees are available by telephone until at least 7 p.m. on evenings and weekends during the signature curing process, and that any voicemail or hold message used by the office of the clerks provides instructions on how to provide a signature cure or signature confirmation. In the proposed amendment, we changed this to 5 o'clock for a day that a county does not have any outstanding ballots that need to be cured. And then finally, Sections 5 and 9 authorize a voter to confirm his or her signature on the mail ballot return envelope by email or text message. By amendment, counties with fewer than 100,000 residents may contract with the Secretary of State or another county to run a text message program in that county. Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation on Assembly Bill 499. I want to thank you for your time and consideration. And with your permission, Chair, I would like to hand it off down to our 2 co-presenters down in Las Vegas, who I think can provide a little bit more detail about why we are attempting to make these changes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon again, Chief Deputy Secretary of State DeGuerra and Mr. Strager. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. Gabriel DeCara for the record, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. Again, we're grateful to Speaker Yeager for bringing this bill and for the amendments. The top-down voter registration transition, the VREMS project, has been very successful so far, and we are excited about further expanding the capabilities of the system and ensuring that we can provide the kind of information that the county clerks and the voters need. This legislation is in line with where we intended to take the system. We have the technical capabilities to carry this out. We believe that it furthers the goal of having more more civic participation, making it more accessible for voters to participate in the process and do things like cure their signatures. This past election, there were tens of thousands of ballots that needed a signature cure, including around 12,000, I believe, that were not in fact cured. People who voted, but those votes were not counted because of a signature mismatch. Making that process more accessible is something that Secretary Aguilar strongly supports, and we are grateful to Speaker Yeager for bringing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Bradley Schrager of Bravo Schrager, once again for the record. And thank you to Speaker Yeager for bringing this forward. I also want to give a special thank you to the county clerks who worked with us on various portions of this bill. The amendments that were offered were essentially friendly amendments. It had to do with the capacity of essentially the smaller and rural counties to do some of the things that the original bill asked them to do, not in any way, as far as I understood it, not in any way any reaction to what information or new services were being put into the bill. For example, the voter portal, the one-stop shopping, where a voter could have lots of access to this information source to find, the hours or the location of their polling places, their own voter registration information. All those things would be accessible not just on their sample ballot or on their mail ballot that they receive, but also essentially on every piece of mail that they would be receiving from the county clerks having to do with elections, which can be a number of things during the year. So there would be a portal for that housed with the Secretary of State. Same thing with the QR code. As far as the DMV information, that has something to do with the impending second election of the voter ID amendment to the Nevada Constitution. It is, if in fact there is going to be a voter ID amendment in this state, it would be useful and would help establish the constitutionality of that amendment if we were able to provide free identification to all Nevadans. Otherwise, you're in danger of invalidation as a poll tax. So the first step in that process is to find out who has and doesn't have compliant IDs under the voter ID amendment. So whether or not there will, in fact, be that law in the future in Nevada, it is good to know who has the IDs right now that are compliant and who does not. So there could be a plan possibly for getting them to them in the event that it becomes necessary. Sections 5 through 9 having to do with signature cures is an attempt to clear up what has been an enormous drain upon the resources, not just of the counties, but of political parties and candidates, all political parties and all candidates having to do with the cure process. In the last general election, 30,000 signatures were rejected. In Washoe County, it was 5% of signatures were rejected. In Clark County, it was almost 5%. That's far too many. And so there have to be other ways to go through the process and to verify the identities to satisfaction of voters who are submitting mail ballots. The impending voter ID amendment does that through, or would in fact, if enacted, would do that through either the last four of your driver's license number or the last four of your social security number or your voter registration number. And so voluntarily replacing signature verification, which is a fraught and very human process subject to subjective judgments by human beings, sometimes correct, but oftentimes not correct, having that supplemented by the four numbers mentioned here will be more useful in reducing the number of signatures sent to cure. And so the person hours and the time and the money spent curing signatures can be better used, for example, in counting and getting returns out faster than in chasing after voters whose ballots ought perhaps should never have been rejected in the first instance. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the hard work, Speaker and Secretary of State's office, Mr. Schrager. Certainly, we had so many ballots that needed curing, and I appreciate how this could help those people make sure their votes counted. Are there any questions, members? Senator Krasner. And then,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Some people have expressed concern to me about giving the last four of their social security number or giving the last four of their driver's license number and then it going into some database where it's kept forever. And I know it's voluntary, but that if you could just address that concern, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Senator. This is Bradley Schrager once again for the record. You know, I understand that concern. And while I'm not discounting it, it is in combination with your signature and with the fact that your ballot is yours. There is very little chance of that ballot being mistaken for someone else's. But if the issue is the security of the ballot, you know, one problem we're going to run into is that the voter ID amendment, which was proposed and passed already one time and by a margin that would lead some to suspect it may pass again, is going to require it rather than make it voluntary. So we may be heading into that world whether anyone likes it or not. So the security concerns, perhaps maybe something someone can raise when it comes to passing that or not passing that a second time at the ballot in 2026. But short of that, it behooves Nevadans to begin getting into the habit of placing those numbers onto their mail ballots now, so that in 2028, if it happens for the first time, we don't have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of ballots where they leave those off and those ballots are subject to challenge or they're spoiled. So I sort of regret to say that's a function of a ballot measure to amend the Nevada Constitution that is impending, whether anyone really likes it or not at this point.
Gabriel DeCara for the record, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. And just to add to that, Senator Krasner, these numbers are for verification purposes. These are numbers that the Secretary of State's office at the county clerks already have on file. So for the purposes of a database, et cetera, these numbers we have are already secure and confidential. They're transmitted to us. A majority of them are transmitted to us by the DMV via secure transfer. We take the data security of our voters incredibly seriously, and we do our best to tell them that every chance we can. Thank you.
any follow-up, Senator Krasner? Vice Chair Daley.
Real quick, just, so in section 6, subsection 4D, what is the problem we're trying to solve there by that information not being disclosed?
Gabriel DeCara, Secretary of State's office. There are sorry, I'm familiarizing myself with the speaker's bill as best I can presently. It's to help for voter verification purposes. This is information that the DMV already collects. We already have a transfer pipeline set up with the DMV's office. This is information that may be helpful for future legislation, et cetera. It's just sending over to the Secretary of State what the DMV already collects. Thank you.
But thank you. The beginning part of section 4 says no information relating to a registered voter may be withheld from the public other than. So I understand the information may be helpful to you, but I'm just curious what problem we're solving by that being withheld. And I can guess. I'm just curious if there's some people. Anyway, just curious what problem we're solving.
Thank you, Senator Daley. I believe that is for privacy concerns. The DMV sends over to the Secretary of State's office the information that they gather, but we want to ensure voter privacy as well. And so there's plenty of information, as I said, for example, last four of Social Security number that is not public. These items would also remain not public as well. I understand your question better now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any additional questions? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Speaker and Chief Deputy Secretary of State, and appreciate Mr. Strager being here too. I'd like to open it up now for support of Assembly Bill 499. Anyone who wishes to speak in support in Carson City or in Las Vegas, come forward. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone come forward. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines who wishes to speak in support of Assembly Bill 499.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 499, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to now go to opposition. Anyone who's opposed to Assembly Bill 499 wishes to be heard either in Carson City or in Las Vegas. Please come forward and state your name for the record. Appreciate your patience.
Good afternoon, Chair Orenshall and Committee. My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party here in opposition to AB 499. The data matching in Section 3 is troubling. We share concerns that were raised on the Assembly side on the extent of information requested due to risks of data breach. Additionally, we've been advised by the Secretary of State that clerks may not legally require proof of citizenship to register to vote. And on the Assembly side, it was clarified that information will not be shared about non-citizens. So we are puzzled about why this irrelevant information would be shared. Additionally, Section 9 would allow voters to include specific identification details, such as the last four digits of their driver's license, social security number, or voter identification number on the return envelope. If this information is accurate and confirmed by the clerk, the signature verification process for the mail ballot is not required. Nevada already does not perform sufficient signature verification to inspire confidence in our elections, and to lower those standards as proposed in this bill does nothing to increase confidence in our elections. Please vote no on AB 499, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Skaggs. Whoever would like to go next, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Penny Brock for the record, Washoe County, Nevada Voter Alliance. We are opposed to this bill. It's a bad bill. It is not a common sense bill, and that is demonstrated by the bill. Throughout the bill, it refers to county clerks. There are only county clerks that take care of elections in rural counties, so it appears this is a rural county bill. In Washoe and Clark County, we have register of voters. So I'm happy that this will not apply, it appears, to Washoe County. The other problem is President Trump issued an executive order on March 25th pertaining to elections. On March 31st, it was codified into H.R. 2499. It is now pending in a House committee. When this comes out, there will be no mail ballots. So what's the point of this bill? There's a lot of other things that will be done away with. Also, Kash Patel said before he was appointed FBI director, said if he was appointed FBI director, he was going to investigate, I think it was about 5 states, and on that list was Nevada. Why would Kash Patel be interested in Nevada? Well, because he's from Las Vegas, and he's been privy to all this election monkey business going on for the last few elections. He is now FBI director. The good news is there has been a committee set up to investigate elections. On that committee is Pam Bondi of the DOJ, Kash Patel, FBI, and one other person. This was just set up within the last week or so. So the point is, it appears our Secretary of State is living in a bubble, not paying attention to what is going on in the federal level. We are no longer are under the former administration. We are now under a new administration in Washington, D.C., President Trump, and many, many, many things are happening that are going to impact all of the states, including Nevada. So you can go ahead and pass bills like this, and it's going to be interesting when DOJ, because now we have DOJ Nevada, and see what they have to say, what the FBI director has to say, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state chairman of the Independent American Party. We don't mind showing our ID when we go to the polls, but we don't want all of our information from the DMV sent to the Secretary of State. We oppose all that information going to them, creating more opportunity for identity theft. What happens to all the information from the DMV that doesn't match any of the voter registration? Where does it go? What does it happen to it? The FBI on October 29, 2024 said that they were warning the public about scammers exploiting the 2024 general election to perpetrate multiple types of financial fraud schemes. And they have a whole page on that I looked at. We found, voter identity theft, submitting changes to voter registrations online disrupts elections. This is an article about that by Latanya Sweeney. Websites for 35 states and DC in 2006 were vulnerable to voter identity theft attacks. An imposter could submit changes to voter registration information, like through the portal which is being proposed. An imposter needed a combination of a voter's name, date, birth, gender, address, social security number, and driver's license number. These things will be available through the DMV. These things are also available from multiple government offices, data brokers, and deep web or dark net markets. We are concerned about identity theft. In fact, earlier this year during the session, I had my identity stolen and they took my bank account down and several credit cards. So it's a serious issue that many people are facing with identity. And these things will be available not just at the DMV, they'll now be available at the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Testimony, Ms. Hansen. Anyone else in opposition? I don't see anyone else coming forward in Carson City or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines in opposition to the measure wishes to be heard.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 499, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the State Vice President of Nevada Families for Freedom. If you look on the opinions, the opinion poll shows 97% of the people are opposed to this bill. And just for your own information, QR codes, not everybody has a smartphone, I being one of them. We don't want the Secretary of State to take on any more jobs. They've already got enough to do. And when I looked up on the Secretary of State's website under elections, it said, quote, supervises state and local elections, unquote. That person is a supervisor, not in charge of the day-to-day work that the county clerks and registrars and their staff do. We don't want top-down government. That's not what we want. We want to be able, I want to be able to go to my county complex and speak with the government people there, because that's the government that's closest to me, not some king on the hill with no accessibility. The county clerk's role is ensuring that elections run smoothly and fairly, and they are the chief elections officers responsible for preparing ballots, procuring voting machines, and training poll workers. That is the job that we, the people, elected them to do. So what it all comes down to is it goes back to the people. Please listen to the people. We don't want top-down government. We don't need the SOS's office to take on anything else. Leave the county clerks to be able to do their job. Please vote no on AB 499. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kimberly Fergus, FER, GUS. I rise in strong opposition to AB 499. The DMV should not be involved in voter registration in any capacity, and now the bill seeks to expand its reach even further by transmitting personal identification data to county clerks for a centralized voter database. This is a clear violation of voter privacy and significant security risk. Data breaches are rampant across government agencies. According to the Identity Theft Resource Center, 2024 saw a 15% increase in data breaches, with government entities being prime targets. Centralizing voter information, including driver's license numbers and partial social security numbers, creates a one-stop shop for hackers and identity thieves. This is a recipe for disaster. Furthermore, AB 499 imposes unfunded mandate on local governments, forcing them to develop and maintain voter portals without providing financial support. According to the National Association of Counties, the average cost of implementing similar digital systems exceeds $250,000 per county annually, money that local governments simply do not have. The so-called signature curing provisions are equally reckless. Verifying voter identity via unsecured mail or text message is not only unreliable, but also ripe for manipulation. We need election integrity, not a system that opens the door to fraud and identity theft. Enough is enough. AB 499 is a misguided overreach that puts voter data at the risk, imposes unsustainable costs, and compromises election security. I strongly urge the committee to reject this dangerous legislation. Thank you. Have a great day.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, Oscar Williams calling, OSCAR WILLIAMS. You may or may not know, back in the 2024 general in Washoe County, the return mail ballot envelopes, the privacy flap did not cover a person's signature. The signature was exposed, along with the other disclosures on the envelope, which are exacerbated by this bill. You really come up against aiding and abetting ID theft and fraud. I mean, you're given the keys to the kingdom there on the mail ballot return envelope eventually. There is something called the Anti-ID Theft and Assumption Act that criminalizes this kind of behavior, anything that aids and abets ID theft and fraud, which this bill seems to do. So I would encourage you to say no to this and all amendments. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Yolanda Kanak, YOLANDA-KNAAK. Dear Chair and Committee, thank you for allowing the Nevada Federation of Republican Women to read our letter in opposition to AB 499 during public comment. The Nevada Federation of Republican Women represents 18 clubs statewide and more than 1,500 members. On March 29th, 2025, the Nevada Federation of Republican Women formally adopted a resolution on election integrity, reflecting our members' commitment to transparent, secure, and constitutionally grounded elections. AB 499 does not promote election integrity. Despite the four proposed amendments, the bill continues to undermine core principles of local oversight and voter confidence. None of the amendments address the fundamental concerns we have raised. To be clear, we strongly oppose the amended version of AB 499 and respectfully urge a no vote. Thank you so much.
Hello again. My name is Ellen Gifford. I'd like to say thank you to the Secretary of State for getting input from the county clerks. I look forward to being able to review these unexpected new changes closely. We appreciate the amendment to Section 3 of this bill that requires only the last 4 numbers of the Social Security number. However, this is still not sufficiently corrected. Existing law, NRS 293-507, requires the last 4 numbers of the Social Security number only if the person registering to vote or having identification check to vote has no driver's license. This law must be consistent across all statutes. We further oppose our Social Security information being transmitted across any internet system. Lastly, anyone can write information on the outside of anyone's mail ballot envelope. Bypassing the signature verification process is not acceptable. Otherwise, the door to fraud is wide open. Verify the signature whether the info is on the envelope or not. And if it is going to be necessary in the future to provide information somehow that you're currently wanting on the outside of the envelope, even though I know it's voluntary, you must come up with another solution for providing that information. Where there is a mail ballot process, there must be a signature verification process. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Perrine, CYNTHIA-PERINE. I would just like to say I am in opposition to this bill, AB 499, in that further electronic transfer of voter registration, registered voter information is not palatable to many voters due to many system security vulnerabilities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Pauline Lee, and I am the president of the Nevada Republican Club. I oppose AB 499 for the following reasons. First, when the DMV issues a driver's license or driver's permit, there is no law or requirement that the DMV verify or require proof of citizenship. In the last election, green card holders and visa holders were sent mail ballots. This is not speculation or a wild claim. In fact, I'm in possession of a copy of a ballot that was sent to a permanent resident, also known as a green card holder. They did not vote this ballot because they were not citizens. Hence, requiring the DMV to send voter registration information to the Secretary of State creates a garbage in, garbage out problem. There is no screening process to verify whether or not these drivers are eligible to vote. Second, I must remind this legislature that the Secretary of State's office experienced a deficit in the last fiscal year. This bill will create additional costs for the DMV and the Secretary of State in terms of gathering information and transferring that information from one part of government to the other. Does our state have sufficient resources to pay for what is requested in this bill? Finally, transferring information from the DMV to the Secretary of State for signature verification purposes is rather moot if Nevada embraces voter ID. It would be less costly and more efficient if this legislature would approve the common sense ideal of election laws, and that is the voter ID bill. Thank you very much for your attention and have a great evening.
Once again, we are in opposition testimony to Assembly Bill 499. Please press star 9 if you wish to testify in opposition.
Cyrus Hojjati, Hojjjaty. I stand in opposition. I will ditto. Thank you so much.
Chair, there are no additional opposition callers at this time.
Very much. I'd like to now go to neutral. Anyone who's neutral on the bill wishes to be heard in Carson City or down in Las Vegas. I see some folks coming forward here. Thanks for your patience. Please, whoever would like to begin, state your name for the record. Proceed.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Vincent Guthreau, last name spelled Gutreau. First name is Vincent, Vinson. I serve as the Executive Director for the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO. I just want to, we're neutral here. I just want to thank the sponsor for how far we came on the amendments. We've had a lot of discussions around elections bills. Every county has to administer elections, and it's just helpful if we can get the administration piece right. And we just want to thank the sponsor. I know you'll hear from some of our larger jurisdictions the same thing, but I just wanted to put that on the record and again thank the sponsor. So thank you for the opportunity.
Very much, Mr. Guthrie. Whoever would like to go next, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good evening, Chair Ornshall, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matijevich, Cadencematijevich, and I serve as Government Affairs Liaison for Washoe County. Washoe County does not have a position on the policy of this bill. We are neutral, but there are some items that we would like to share with the committee with respect to how the local elections officials would administer under the provisions of the bill. And I would like to first, as Mr. Guthreau did, start by thanking Speaker Yeager for meeting with us and talking with us about how indeed county elections officials can implement the bill consistent with the intent. And really at this point, we have one item that we still have some remaining concerns with how we would implement it. And it has to do with the language that's in both Section 5 and Section 9. The supplemental information that's contemplated in being placed on the return envelope for a mail ballot. Operationally, there's not really any problem with that information being included on the outside of the mail ballot. And indeed, in many ways, we do think that it could help serve the purpose of expediting the curing process. However, the order in which we evaluate that information for purposes of validating a ballot is inconsistent with what we do now. I think as the members of this committee know, we currently validate the signature. If we were to reverse that, that would significantly change our operational procedures, essentially putting us back to a manual process, what we can do now automatically. And so we'll continue to work with the speaker. We're confident that we can get there to see that be, that we would first verify the signature, and that if the signature required curing, then that supplemental information could be used for purposes of curing without having to make additional contact with the voter, would indeed expedite that, but would not require us to manually process every single mail-in ballot prior to doing the signature verification process. So again, we're here in neutral just on the implementation. Mr. Chairman, if I could, just one clarification. In Chapter 293 of NRS, the definition of clerk is interpreted to include registrars of voters. And so indeed, this bill would be applicable in Washoe County and in Clark County. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for working with the sponsor. Good evening. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Ornshall and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, representing Clark County. I'm just going to ditto to the comments made by my colleagues from NACO and from Washoe County. I think from our perspective in Clark, it's really about its volume. Last general election, we had over 1 million people cast a ballot for the election, and 42% of those were done by mail. So we are cognizant about making sure that we are doing this process as quickly as we can, and just echo the comments made by Washoe County. Thank you, and thank you to the sponsor for working with us on the amendments that were presented today.
Very much, Ms. Kennedy. I'm not seeing anyone else in neutral. Broadcasting anyone on the phone lines who's neutral on the measure and wishes to be heard.
Chair, we have no additional callers on the line at this time.
Thank you very much. And Speaker Yeager, thank you for your patience. I know that the hour's getting late. Any closing comments you'd like to make?
Steve Yeager for the record. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee for hearing the bill. With your permission, I would like to just hand it off to Mr. Schrager, who I think has maybe one or two clarifying points, and then we could be done with this one, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Schrager, thank you also for your patience. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Once again, Bradley Schrager of Bravo Schrager for the record. I just want to speak to the county's comments just now. We have had very productive conversations with them, and I want to thank them for that because we appreciate their work, and they're the ones in the end who have to deploy and conduct our elections. we understand their concerns. We're not attempting to increase their burden. We want to work with them to increase their effectiveness. Nevada has some of the best elections in the country, and we're going to continue to work with the clerks to address the specific concerns that they raised here just now today regarding the signature cure process. And we believe that by the time this bill reaches its final form, it will reflect some resolutions and solutions to those concerns. So I thank them for that.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Schrager. Thank you to our Chief Deputy Secretary of State, DeGuerra. Thanks all for working with all the stakeholders on this bill, and I appreciate your efforts to try to, improve the ballot curing process. And with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 499, and we will open the hearing on Assembly Bill 547. Thank you again for doing a triple header for us. No bad feelings about the baseball game either.
Good afternoon, Chair Orenshaw, Vice Chair Daley, members of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations. Again, my name is Steve Yeager. I represent Assembly District 9 in Southwest Las Vegas, and I'm excited to be here this evening to present Assembly Bill 547 in its first reprint, which is not about elections. This bill revises provisions relating to public employment. Just by way of background, Chair, one of the things I take most seriously in this building is the success and prosperity of our constituents, Nevada citizens. As legislators, I believe it is our duty to do everything in our power to provide economic opportunity to the people of the state, which is a key component of Assembly Bill 547. In part, Assembly Bill 547 aims to address the often arbitrarily limiting requirement that job applicants possess a bachelor's degree to obtain employment. The requirement that applicants have a degree, particularly for jobs that did not always have such a requirement, is better known as degree inflation. And while at first glance, additional education as a prerequisite for employment might seem beneficial, in practicality, it decreases opportunities for many candidates, including those who may possess years of relevant work experience. Furthermore, such positions can be resultingly hard to fill, leading to a system that disadvantages both employees and employers. It is not surprising, therefore, that businesses and states are making efforts to move away from unsubstantiated degree requirements for employment. In a 2023 publication, the National Conference of State Legislatures, NCSL, pointed to companies such as IBM, Google, Apple, and more as they have removed degree requirements from certain positions in recent years, and it highlighted a growing swell among states across the nation to eliminate such requirements from most state positions. It is time for Nevada to catch up. Blanket reliance on a degree as a marker of employment qualification simply does not make sense. It unfairly limits the workforce pool in the state, and as positions remain open, it decreases Nevada's economic stability. We need to take a more common sense approach. Additionally, I want to touch on the immense uncertainty and turbulence our federal workers have experienced in the past few months. We have been watching with great trepidation as federal workers across a variety of industries in Nevada have unexpectedly lost their jobs. This includes Veterans Affairs employees, national park workers, folks in General Services Administration, and sadly, many, many more. It is critical that we provide an avenue for federal workers who have found themselves in such a precarious state through no fault of their own, to leverage their experience and expertise as they are forced to seek new employment opportunities. In its recognition of federal government employee experience, AB 547 provides one such avenue. Ultimately, Assembly Bill 547 seeks to benefit employees, employers, and the state as a whole by implementing common sense employment practices that recognize the value of work experience and other qualifications beyond just a degree. This legislation is essential in opening doors to our workforce, and given our current economic uncertainties, this bill could not be more timely. Chair, if you would allow, I'll go through very briefly the provisions of the bill.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Steve Yeager for the record. Specifically, Assembly Bill 547 requires that an appointing authority recognize relevant experience that employee has obtained in the federal government as equivalent to experience obtained within the state government. This recognition should be considered to recruit, evaluate, select, manage, and promote employees, including in matters relating to an employee's pay.
Speaker, I am so sorry. We are concerned we might have lost the room we were in. It looks like we're connected to a different room in.
Where's that Kelsey?
If that's, oh, it looks like that we're in the same room. I'm so sorry we interrupted you. It looks like it was just at a different view. I was worried we might have lost our connection. If there was anyone who wanted to testify on your bill here that was down in Las Vegas, please continue, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Steve Yeager, for the record. I recognize that as well because I saw myself on 3 TVs on the screens down there. So thank you, Chair. I'll continue with some remarks. So additionally, we're going through the explanation of the bill. Existing law requires the administrator of the Division of Human Resources Management must prepare and maintain a master classification plan for all positions in the classified service to provide for reasonable parity among qualifications and pay schedules in the same class. So this bill requires that the administrator must allow a person to substitute equivalent federal government employee experience for experience obtained at the state level when determining those qualifications. Furthermore, the bill prohibits an appointing authority, with certain exceptions, from requiring an applicant for a position in the classified or unclassified service to have obtained a bachelor's degree as a condition precedent to employment. However, if the appointing authority determines that the position requires certain knowledge, skills, or abilities that may only be obtained by pursuing and achieving a bachelor's degree, this provision does not apply. And I think the most logical way to think about this is perhaps the Attorney General's office. A lot of those employees need to have a JD, so necessarily they're going to have a bachelor's degree. So that exception would still remain, where if a bachelor's degree is required for some reason, it could still be a requirement for employment. Finally, Chair, Assembly Bill 547 removes certain duties of the administrator relating to reviewing and revising employment requirements necessitating that a person hold a bachelor's degree. So, Chair, I want to thank you and the committee for your consideration of this measure. We know that employment opportunities are critically important, both on an individual level and for Nevada's prosperity as a whole. This bill allows us to benefit our state and its people by implementing reasonable, workable employment practices. I urge your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Speaker, for presenting the bill. And I think certainly, regardless of how you feel to the cuts in the workforce in the federal government, I think there's been a tremendous brain drain and a lot of very qualified people who could really help our state government in many different ways. And I really appreciate the bill. And oftentimes, experience can be much more valuable than the piece of paper hanging on the wall. There's a lot of life experience and work experience that I think your bill reflects that. Members, any questions for our speaker? Senator Steinbeck.
Sure. Thank you, Speaker. No, this is good. This is a good policy. My question is, wouldn't that experience transfer over today? If you worked in a federal park and then you wanted to apply to a job that was in a state park, would that experience, is it being excluded today? Is there something that I'm not seeing there?
Steve Yeager, for the record, through you, Chair, to the Senator.
Please go direct.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate the question. I think it could be applied today without the provisions of the bill, but in looking at this bill, I mean, I'll tell you, I initially envisioned just having this be about, you don't need to have a bachelor's degree if it's not necessary. But as I thought about this bill and as we got more information about what was coming out from the federal government, I thought that perhaps there was a gap there in our law. I will tell you that a number of other states have done this in terms of saying we need to look at federal experience and equate it to state experience, but most states have done it through executive order rather than through legislation. I wasn't sure if that was going to be possible here in the state, so I felt it necessary to put it in there just to make sure that if there was any doubt at all that our hiring folks could look at equivalent experience and say, all right, even though it was federal experience, we will use it for state in terms of pay, qualifications, and that. So probably not really the necessary, but I want to make sure that if folks are looking at our law for guidance, they're going to see it there.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. That prompted a question. How many other states do this, please?
Steve Yeager, for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator. I don't think any state has done it by legislation, but I'll tell you there were at least 2 states that inspired me to pursue this legislation, and that was Maryland and Pennsylvania have both done it by executive order. And I think about Maryland, that's where most of the federal workers, a lot of them actually live in Maryland. They don't live in Washington, D.C. So those were the 2 that inspired me. I think there are additional ones, but I know those are the 2 that come to mind right away. And again, as far as I know, every state that's done it has done it through executive order through the governor or the executive agency. So I think we would be the first to actually put it in our state law as far as I know.
Thank you very much. Members, any additional questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Speaker. And with that, we will open it up to support for the measure. Anyone who wishes to speak in support, and it looks like our hearing rooms are empty, but the hour's late, so nothing to do with the bill. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines in support of the measure wishes to be heard?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of Assembly Bill 547, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. It's me, Kimberly Fergus, FERGUS. And yes, Assemblyman Yeager, I approve, and I'm in strong support of this bill. I just have one question. Is it just for federal workers going into state workers, or will this bill address not having to have a bachelor's degree over umpteen years of service? And for my testimony, the bill addresses a critical issue, the unnecessary barrier of requiring a bachelor's degree for state employment when years of relevant work experience can be equally valuable, if not more so. How many qualified, capable candidates are being overlooked simply because they lack a specific degree? And you guys have said this. But despite having decades of hands-on experience, this bill recognizes that practical experience, including federal service, can be justified as beneficial as formal education, allowing for a more inclusive, fair, and competent workforce. It's time to value experience and skill over a piece of paper. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.
Chair, we have no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you very much. Opposition, anyone who's opposed to the measure and wishes to be heard? I'm not seeing anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines in opposition to Assembly Bill 547?
Chair, we have no additional callers on the line at this time.
Neutral, anyone who's neutral on the measure? Again, we don't see anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas coming forward. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines neutral to the measure?
Chair, we have no additional callers on the line at this time.
Thank you. Any closing comments, Speaker? Thank you for spending the afternoon with us.
Steve Yeager for the record. Thank you, Chair and committee members. I want to thank those who participated in all these bills today, and I think what we saw here was we can disagree on one bill, but we can agree on the next. So I appreciate that call-in testimony, and I did want to make it clear for the caller that this bill does do both of those things. It removes the bachelor's degree requirement where not needed for state employment and also recognizes equivalent federal experience. So if that wasn't clear in my presentation, it does both of those. And I want to thank you for the time, Chair, and for indulging me for 3 bills today. I think I'll be back with you next Tuesday for a couple more. I feel like I live in this committee, and you probably feel like you do as well. But thank you so much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Speaker. We appreciate all the good legislation you brought forward to our committee. With that, I'll close the hearing on Assembly Bill 547. I do want to remind anyone who might have missed the opportunity to call in, testify, or appear in person, that you can submit written comments on any of the bills. You can fax them, email them, mail them to our committee, and we will include them as part of the record. The last item on our agenda is public comment. I'm not seeing anyone in either of the hearing rooms in Carson City or Las Vegas coming forward for public comment. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone lines that wishes to make public comment. We are limiting it to 2 minutes per person.
Chair, your public line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
Thank you, members, for your participation and your insightful questions. We are adjourned.